This episode is all about past, present, and future state-funded grants and relief opportunities for the childcare industry within the United States and specifically New York State. So if you're interested in that, please keep on listening. Greetings! I'm here by myself today, and it's going to be a great episode despite that. Welcome back to Childcare Sights and Sounds. My name is Danny. My co-host Gigi is not here today, but I was inspired to just go ahead and make this episode anyway because there's a lot of information that I have learned about over the last couple of months that I think, based on the performance of similar videos and podcast episodes, I think that you would appreciate hearing about and learning about. So I figured I'd share. Also, full transparency, I was 100% gonna skip this week's episode because I didn't have one recorded already with Gigi. I was tired. I did a lot of work the past couple of days and traveling. And then I logged into YouTube and noticed that I passed the 20,000 subscriber mark. I can't believe that. I honestly, 20,000 subscribers is not a huge amount in comparison to the accounts on this platform that have millions and millions and hundreds of millions of subscribers. And being that I've been on YouTube for over 10 years at this point, I feel like if I was consistent, I should have passed that a long time ago. But for me, it's a lot. Can you imagine like 20,000 people in one room? I can't. But I thank each and every one of 20,000 of you for being here, watching these videos and supporting my content throughout the years. It honestly means a lot to me. So I felt ever so inclined to make sure I come on and say thank you, even if I didn't feel like recording. But as I mentioned, like, this is not just a throwaway episode. If you are interested in learning about grants and government funded childcare and COVID related funding that has come down over the years into the childcare industry, that's really what I'm going to be talking about in this episode. And if you are listening to this as a podcast on your favorite podcast streaming platform, it would mean the world to me if you would scroll down on that page, click 5 stars after you listen to this, and leave a review or some feedback. Also, if you are only listening to this on a podcast streaming platform, I might be sharing clips of, or either clips or screenshots of things that I'm reading and referencing here on my computer. So if you are watching, you do see me with my laptop in my hand. The reason is I'm reading stuff from my laptop, directly citing my sources so that you can go and pull the information for yourself. But without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into it. This type of video is something that I would normally create or attempt to create a shorter format version of, like cutting out all the unnecessary fluff, like not really diving too deep into certain things or sharing about my experiences. But because this is a podcast episode where it is expected to go into a little bit more detail, I figured, let me go ahead and just do that. Let's share as much as I can. So, one thing that I wanted to start off with, but before talking about what new information I have come across over the past couple months, is the stuff that has already happened, basically. All the different sorts of grants and relief and funding and scholarships from New York State specifically. That is where my childcare programs are. I do have multiple childcare centers in the state of New York. So all the things and articles and whatever I'm referencing is honestly going to be about what I have learned about from the state of New York. However, if you are anywhere else in the country, I have clients all over that I've spoken to that have received funding in different states that are similar to this, similar to what has been happening in New York, and sometimes even better. So please don't assume that your state does not have anything like this, or won't have, or didn't have. Look into it. I think that, I guess, to start off, before diving into the specific history of the funding that has happened or what I know is coming up, a good thing for me to mention at the beginning, if you hear nothing else, or before you click off because you think this is not relevant to you, it is super important for you to be tapped into your local organizations. Okay, I have said this in many different videos and blog posts and things in the past that I have published and put out there, that you need to be, some people call it being in the room. You just need to be present at as much things as you can be present for, that your licensing agency is hosting, that your child care resource and referral agency is hosting, that is a CCR&R. If you're in a state that has a quality rating and improvement system, a QRIS, if they're hosting things, a lot of these agencies that are either nonprofit or state funded, or just there to be a resource for childcare providers and parents, a lot of these places that you might overlook or just delete their emails, that is where you're gonna get details about things that you could take advantage of locally. So again, even if you're not in New York, every state has, hopefully I'm not misspeaking, I think that every state has a child care licensing agency, a place where you would need to go in order to get a daycare license if you're trying to open a child care program. Every state should have a child care resource and referral agency. Some states, it's the same thing. In New York, that's not the case. There are dozens of child care resource and referral agencies that are not our licensing agency. They serve two different functions. And some states do have a quality rating and improvement system, but not all. So Google those terms. Again, I'll say childcare licensing, childcare resource and referral, and quality rating and improvement system, CCR&R, QRIS, in whatever your state is, or in whatever your city and state is. Just Google it. You will find it. You could go to childcareaware.org. Childcareaware.org will help you find your local childcare resource and referral agency if one exists. And I'll leave that linked down below. And please, if I forget to link something in the description, just put it in the comments. Be like, hey girl, you forgot to link this, and I will reply to your comment with the link. But I will try my best to link everything I reference in this video or in this episode, so that you guys can have access to the resources that I'm talking about. So please be sure to look into local agencies and local organizations that are specifically there to help give the information out to you about what's going on in childcare. These organizations and agencies are specifically put in place to provide access to resources and give you information. Even if you are not currently a childcare provider, if you are just a prospective childcare provider, your local CCR&R might be able to help you through the licensing process. And spoiler alert, they might do it for free. They will likely do it for free. And typically the licensing process isn't hard. It's just a lot of paperwork and yeah. But that's not what we're talking about. So you could likely join an email list on all of these local organizations that might be near you. sign up for Childcare Aware, sign up for whatever organizations they list as your local CCR&Rs. There might be multiple. If your licensing agency has an email list, try to get on it. And the reason that I say all of this is because these are the websites and organizations that are sending out notices through either phone calls or emails or actual mailing lists, getting stuff in the mail that gave all the information that I'm about to share. And what I have found out about these grant opportunities or funding or scholarship programs that happen in the past without being on the list for CCR&Rs, maybe. But what I will say is I have been in groups with local childcare providers near me that did not know about all of these things. And it's probably because we get a lot of email that we automatically assume is junk, and we're not really looking into it or opening it, or we're deleting it, or just not, like, literally ignoring it because we assume, like, oh, they're just sharing that annual notice, or like, no, just pay a little bit closer attention. Make sure you're on everybody's email list and do some digging on Google. Do your Googles. I'll let you in on a little bit of a secret. I do private video consultations for clients that book me. My booking information is always in the description of each of these videos that I post on YouTube. So if you are interested or in need of a video consultation, you could scroll down to the description of this and book with me. But 90% of the bookings that I complete, 90% of the consultations I complete, are me Googling stuff for my clients, quickly finding it on Google. You can Google these things. And I'm not saying that to make it seem as if I think you're incapable or you're not. Like, I'm sharing this to help you save your money. I love connecting with you guys. I literally cannot, I do not have the time to do it for free outside of just posting these types of videos or podcast episodes when I have the time to do so. But in terms of just opening my calendar for free consultations, I'm not going to do it because I will be booked all the time for things that you can easily Google. So if you don't want to book with me, that is fine. Google this stuff. It will come up for you if you just Google it. And if it doesn't come up for you, make a phone call to a local resource and referral agency that will help you for free, okay? If you are not interested in taking the time to do your Googles, that is something separate. That is something I respect. I often will pay for convenience and quickness versus doing something by myself. So I get it, but just throwing that out there. Anywho, I want to go through what I can remember. Honestly, it's been so much, but I want to go through what I can remember. We received the opportunity to apply for or take advantage of in New York from New York State specifically. This is not about the EIDL loans or the PPP loans or anything else from the SBA. This is not about the federal programs. This is about New York State programs and what you might find similarly in whatever United States of America location you might be in. Anything outside the country, I don't know. I'm not your girl. Let me know if you do know in the comment section. If you are from outside the US, did your country provide any sorts of relief programs or funding or stabilization monies to the childcare industry? I'm actually curious about that. But in New York, a little over 3 years ago, in the middle of March, we received a lot of notification and news that schools were shutting down. Public schools were shut down. We thought was going to be for 2 weeks, ended up being nearly 2 years that things were shut down. So that's interesting. But aside from that, a few short weeks later, thankfully in New York, we started to see the rollout of different relief strategies we could take advantage of in order to keep our business open if we wanted to. In the state of New York, we were not forced to close our doors like I know other childcare providers in certain states had to. And honestly, not even in certain states. If you were a New York City daycare provider in a center-based program, or if you were contracted with New York City Department of Education as a private business, if you had a contract for like universal pre-K, pre-K for all, or early learn or something like that, you were forced to close your doors. And I can't imagine, especially if you weren't under some sort of contract, like I mentioned, if you were just forced to close your doors because of licensing requirements, I can't imagine like what you must have done or had to do in order to survive. If you didn't have a surplus of funds saved up to hold you over until this period of time where this was going to end or allow you to reopen your doors. It was very hard on the childcare industry as a whole that was already very much unstable. So thankfully, we were not forced to close. There were still some local childcare providers that chose to close their doors. We didn't have to. We didn't, honestly, because we couldn't afford to back then. So we stayed open and we pushed through. I have an amazing dream team of staff, and that's how we did it. In spring of 2020, the first thing that I can recall and that I have written down is that our governor, which at the time was Governor Cuomo, announced $30 million in childcare scholarships for essential workers and supplies for childcare providers. New York State will apply federal CARES funding to provide childcare and keep essential staff on the job. So basically, from what I can recall and from what I see written here, childcare providers throughout the state were offered PPE. I remember that. Our local resource and referral agency, again, getting on their newsletters, they sent out emails to us as childcare providers to say that they would be distributing PPE, personal protective equipment, and I believe cleaning supplies. And think back 3 years ago to how difficult that was to find. We could not find no toilet paper. We could not find no masks. That wasn't even a thing for months because any mask you had, you were expected to like give to the hospitals. No masks, no toilet paper, no hand sanitizer. We started ordering our hand sanitizer from a liquor distribution company, I think. If I'm remembering correctly, there was a company that I found on some area of the internet that was selling hand sanitizer by the gallons with pumps in it. And I remember being so thankful that I found them, because if you remember, a lot of companies that were selling certain products or certain types of clothing were like switching to only providing hand sanitizer or only providing like custom sewn cloth masks or things like that. So we had to get creative in finding different avenues of finding suppliers for those types of things in order for us to safely keep our doors open. It was a mess. But so when our local CCR&R sent out notices that they were going to be distributing this PPE and these cleaning supplies, that was honestly a blessing. We were nearly first in line. Okay. And then talking about scholarships, another thing that was very, very helpful for our business was the scholarship funding that actually was given to parents. Now, a lot of providers complained, and I get it. They complained, why is this money going to the parents? Because the way that it worked in New York was, and honestly, it wasn't going to the parents. It wasn't like the state was giving checks to parents and expecting the parents to give the checks to us. That's not how it worked. But a parent had to apply for the scholarship if they were an essential worker, and the state would cover up to the market rate of that parent's tuition based on that child's age and session of care. So they would cover up to the market rate, and for us, that was pretty much covering their whole tuition, with the exception of a couple dollars here and there. So parents were able to come to us for them basically free, and we were getting the money. At that point, we were getting checks from our local CCR&R because it was a program that they were either organizing or helping to control. I don't know. But that was a thing that was super helpful. We started to get creative about how we were marketing the bit, because at the end of the day, it was still a business that, in order to survive through this pandemic, we had to make it through. So we were trying to be creative about our marketing, and rather than just advertising as like, oh, safe, clean, healthy daycare. Yes, all those things were true, but we also made sure to emphasize, if you are working right now, you are an essential worker and you can come here for free. So we put that all over all of our flyers and all over our website. We had a special page on our website. We helped families through the process of applying for it if they had questions, or just a lot of families weren't aware until they were looking for childcare, found us, and was pleasantly surprised that it could be free for them, at least for some time. I think that it was supposed to last a couple months, and then it got extended like 2 or 3 times. So it lasted about a year, or a year and some change, where parents were really getting free childcare for that long. And with that in mind, again, like I said, some providers were really pissed. Like, they didn't understand why they had to have parents because I guess the argument is like, okay, if parents don't come that are essential workers, then their spots are probably just vacant and they're not receiving any money for those vacant spots, which I get. But I didn't take the time to process, because we were just so focused on that's not going to happen. We're going to fill the spots and make sure that as many families that need childcare, that are essential workers, know about this. We were marketing to make sure the spots would be filled and there would be no issue. So there was that. The scholarship program was really great, and I think they should bring back. I, again, understand the argument of the need for funds to go directly to providers regardless of how many kids are enrolled. But I think that with the cost of childcare in general, I'm not a parent. If I was, thank God I owned a daycare, because regardless of how much money I make, or could make in a different field, the expense of childcare is ridiculous. And I say that as someone that is setting the tuition rates and having to set them above market rate, rightfully so, because we do offer a quality program, but it's because I have to, in order to make sure that all of our expenses are covered. And there's a big disconnect in general, I think, with who is to blame, right? And this episode is not meant for me to go in on the intricacies of childcare costs and all of that. I'm not an expert on it. I don't know. But a lot of people just jump to oh, this business owner is greedy, like they're not taking into consideration my bills or what I do, or I'm late for rent or whatever. Truthfully, no, we can't take that into consideration, because if we do, we literally won't be able to pay our teachers. And similarly, teachers sometimes wonder why they can't be getting paid more. If we try to pay teachers more, then we're going to be increasing the rate that parents have to pay, who are also complaining. So it would be excellent, I feel, and it's not even like, before I even make that point, it can't be that we don't increase the rates and pay teachers more, because then the expense of paying for the property and utilities and disposable supplies and curriculum and insurances and all of the things that come along with running a business like this that already has such low margins, like it's really not possible. We can't raise salaries without raising tuition, and we can't raise tuition without pissing off families, or possibly, if you're in certain areas, losing them and then having to shut down anyway. So the scholarship program would be excellent, I feel. I think it would be excellent to come back and to stay. And arguably, it could, some people, you might be commenting right now like, oh, that's what DSS is for. And DSS stands for Department of Social Services within New York State. Or if you're in New York City, it would be Administration for Children's Services, or ACS or HRA, I believe. So like subsidies or vouchers, childcare assistance, right? That is not the same as what the scholarship program was. The childcare assistance that was already been around for decades, well before the pandemic, that is based off of a family's situation, like their income, I believe, versus their household size, or if they're in an emergency situation, or like homeless, or having other sort of like state benefits. Not a lot of people qualify for that need assistance with childcare, because otherwise they can't cover their every other expense. It's honestly a mess. If the Essential Worker Scholarship was simply put, if you were an essential worker, if you had this job, this job, this job, this job, or this job, and I'm not just talking about like doctors and police officers and firefighters. No, if you were a grocery store worker, that was considered an essential business. If you worked at the post office, I believe that was considered an essential job. If you did anything that required you to go to work, even during the beginning stages of that pandemic, that was essential, and you were able to get free childcare. I do think that there was some income guidelines, I think, at some point. Don't quote me on that. But it was very different than the childcare assistance, like the regular DSS coverage, or guidelines. So if we could bring something similar back, even if it's just a portion, and actually I'll get to that in a second, because I do think, at least in New York, I do think that something similar or something helpful is coming, and I'll explain in a second. Did your state offer any sorts of relief programs for parents, like scholarship funding for parents in need of childcare? If they did, let me know in the comments where that happened. So what state are you in? And describe it. How did that work out for you as childcare providers? And how did it work out for the parents? I'd love to know. Then a couple months later, I think it was a couple months later, there was another $65 million in federal CARES Act funding available for childcare providers statewide through the New York Forward Childcare Expansion Incentive program. And the funding included $20 million to assist childcare program with reopening and the expansion of capacity by providing materials to support a more socially distant model and for supplies and activities associated with reopening and expansion. This may include partition, short-term rental of space, etc. And then the other $45 million was for the reopening and expansion incentive funds to pay for 50% of the cost of newly opened classrooms. And it was a maximum grant amount of $6,000 as an incentive to open classrooms. And this came from the experience of childcare closings in masses. Even though it was not required for childcare programs to close in New York State, a lot of them did choose to close, and thinking that it was going to be for a couple of weeks and ending up realizing that it was going to be much longer than that, or possibly forever. And the state wanted us to be open, and they provided money for programs to reopen. Additionally, the $45 million that it's talking about with opening classrooms is because, of course, COVID cut down on a lot of programs' attendance. So some classrooms were left dark or closed, even though like a center might have been partially open but not able to fill all their spots. So some of their rooms were still closed. So the funds were available to give to providers to purchase materials to help with opening a new classroom. I don't really know much about that because I think it was honestly too much for me. Like it was the maximum amount from my understanding was $6,000 per classroom. And the amount of time it was going to take to apply for this grant was not going to work for me. It was too much paperwork for the max of $6,000, and we also didn't really our rooms were already open. I'll say that. So we didn't need to. I don't have much information about that. The next thing that I have listed is multiple CARES 3 scholarship extensions. So like I mentioned before, the scholarship program kept like coming close to an end, and then they would send an email to extend it again, giving parents more time for that free childcare on their end. So that was good for them. And then we started to see like simpler application processes for lump sums of money paid straight to the program regardless of attendance. We got to apply for the childcare stabilization grant. There was a 1.0 version and a 2.0 version. If I'm not mistaken, both versions were based on your license capacity and not necessarily the amount of kids that were enrolled. So if you had a certain license capacity, you would get a certain dollar amount paid out to you over a certain amount of months. That was for the Stabilization 1.0. And you could use, I don't remember if for 1.0 that you could use those funds for whatever you wanted. I think there were less restrictions or less details on how to use the funds than there were this for Stabilization 2.0. So 1.0, I think, occurred at the end of 2020 into the beginning of 2021. I believe that's like fall, winter of 2020 into winter, spring of 21. And then about a year later, or a few months after that ended, we were presented with the opportunity to apply for Stabilization 2.0, which was specifically meant for pouring into our workforce. 75% of the funds that we received for 2.0 have to go, or had technically have, because we have until September of 2023 to spend all the funds, but 75% of that needed to go to employees in some way, either as bonuses or as incentives, like for like what's it called, retirement funds, or health insurance, or I should have it open, I'm sorry. It's too much. It's too much to get all the paperwork and all the articles for every one of these things. But 75% of the funds needs to go towards incentives for the employees. So that could be, like I was saying before, bonuses paid out to them, increases in pay, health insurance or mental health services, or professional development, or to which scholarships, funds, things for the employees. Okay. A lot of providers also were upset about that, or confused, like specifically about the pay increases part, which is not required. None of it was required to do everything. You just had to pick one or a few of them and spend 75% of the funds you received from Stabilization 2.0 on those things. And some providers were confused about why they would say increases in pay, because like after the funds are done, how are you supposed to sustain the increase in pay that they received? Which is a valid question. So the smartest thing to do would be to issue bonuses, in addition to the other sorts of like benefits that don't have to be permanent. But whatever. That was 1.0 and 2.0. We're currently still in the middle of using funds for 2.0 as a state. As I mentioned, every provider that was granted Stabilization 2.0 has until September of 2023 to use out the funds. So that's where we currently are. And another place that we currently are that was really big for New York was the Childcare Deserts grant. I know that a lot of states had Childcare Desert grant opportunities. If your state had some sort of Childcare Desert grant, leave the information about how it worked for you in the comment section below. For us in New York, if you were a current childcare provider at the time that the first Childcare Desert grant was released, you were not able to apply for that grant with your current childcare program. You would have to be opening a new childcare program. It was split up into RFA 1, which RFA stands for Request for Applications. So Request for Applications 1 and Request for Applications 2. So RFA 1 and RFA 2. RFA 1 was the first one that came out, and it was for new providers only, or new programs only, I'll say, because you could, if you already had a program, you could try to open another one and apply, and you could get, honestly, if you really looked into the details of that RFA, which I did years ago, and that is a video on this channel. I will link it in the description on my YouTube, or I'll try to insert a card here somewhere. It'll be somewhere, or you can just go to my channel and type in desert, the word desert, and it should come up. I did a video that was like almost 40 minutes, could possibly be longer than this podcast, about the Childcare Desert grant opportunity. With that, with RFA 1, you could have gotten close to $1 million, like $500,000+ to open a new center. And I'm saying like close to $1 million. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, in some cases it could have been over. It's really conditional upon the size of program that you open, where it was going to be located, if you were going to do non-traditional hours, and if you were going to be accepting infants and toddlers and how many of them. There was a whole bunch of conditions, dozens and dozens of pages of grant opportunity. Like the RFA itself was a lot of pages. I go into much more detail about that specifically on the video that I just mentioned. So go check it out if you haven't already. With that, that is something that we tried to apply for. And most of the people that I know got rejected. Like we applied, a couple months later, we got rejection notices. Or not necessarily rejections, but just we ran out of funds is what was said. That we received your application, we ran out of funds, something like that. And that they would let us know if funds become available again. And with all of the locations that I tried to submit applications for the RFA1, because it seemed like an excellent opportunity to apply for, we did not receive any, like all of them, same thing. We ran out of funds, we ran out of funds, we ran out of funds. Okay. Nearly a year later, we did get notice that we were selected for one of our sites. Like they found more funds. I don't know like how they found the funds, or if like other providers that got chosen originally either dropped out, didn't meet the criteria, didn't continue, and then now they have the funds. I don't know. But we were selected. We're hoping that it comes through, but honestly, it's literally been almost 2 years since I've applied, and I've heard so many unfortunate horror stories from other providers that are going through the process that did get selected, that I'm not getting my hopes up, honestly. If it works out, it works out great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Whatever. I do think that the things that I've been hearing as complaints, I guess, are important to note. And maybe if you are going through this, or if you know someone that's going through this, leave that in the comments below as well. And maybe we could discuss a little, or you might be able to help someone else out that's stuck along this process. But with this grant opportunity, this RFA in particular, which is much different than all the ones that I just named. This one, you have to meet certain eligibility criteria off the rip. That's number one. Number two is you have to meet certain deliverables. You have to provide deliverables, do certain actions, submit certain documents get certain inspections done on a consistent basis. And if you're not meeting all the benchmarks with each like deliverable and with each inspection, then you're simply like, they're gonna cut your pay. And the pay was supposed to be given over, I believe it was 8 payments over 2 years. If I'm not mistaken, 8 quarterly payments for 2 years. I know that there have been a lot of complaints that providers that were accepted have not received their payments, or some of their payments, or their payment is not as much as it expected. And that's really important, because some providers only opened their center thinking, or their home day, or their program, thinking that they were going to be able to do so with the funds. Now, I'll say that I knew that it was clear, to me at least, that this was going to be like a reimbursement. Like, you should be doing this only if you're expecting to do this by yourself, because you're going to have to pay the money up front. And once they review everything you've done and you met the deliverables, whatever, then you would be getting your money back, basically, essentially, on a quarterly basis. In like the simplest of terms. So, but a lot of people don't operate that way, or don't want to, and I wouldn't want to either. And yes, I may have like relied heavily on the funding as well if it were me. So it's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate that some people are caught up in that type of situation where their money is tied up or they're stuck along an opening process because this opportunity is not what they expected, or it's just way more robust, or way like the deliverables for them is too much. It's just, it's a lot. Now with RFA2, that was for current providers. Child Care Desert Grant RFA2 was for current providers. And what that means is, like, if you already are running a program, a couple months after RFA1 was released, RFA2 was released, and you were able to apply for your current program to receive grant funds in order to expand within your currently existing program. So if you had a center and you had a dark or closed classroom where no kids were enrolled into, and you wanted to open it, and more importantly, not just that it was empty and no kids were enrolled, it had to be not on your license. I remember I was pissed because we had, at the time that we were eligible to apply for RFA2 at one of our centers, there was a room that we were not using, but it was on our license, obviously, because we wanted to make sure we were licensed for the amount of kids that we wanted to have. So making it not like a license requirement was kind of crazy, in my opinion. Like, you had to be increasing your license capacity, or I believe in either increasing your license capacity, or you could choose to like do non-traditional hours, or like, so there was like certain conditions that kind of locked us out of being able to apply for RFA2. And same for other providers that I know of. But if you were in a position where you had an extra room or two that you wanted to open and add to your license, you could do that, and you could apply for this RFA2 and receive grant funds for it. I think based on the number of children that you would be adding, and if you were a home daycare provider, I think you could have done it where you were increasing your hours or taking on like either special needs or more infants and toddlers or something like that. Like, if you were going to be making a change that could help impact like the demand that was going on for certain types of childcare, then I think at that point you could apply. Anyway, I currently don't have much experience with RFA1 or RFA2 to dive deeper into it than that, but I would highly recommend that you go watch the video that I referenced that's currently on my channel, and from there you can see more details just about the Child Care Deserts grant if you're interested. The grant opportunity is now closed to my knowledge, but who's to say it can't open again, or something similar can't happen again. And if it does, that would be awesome. I think that it's necessary. I think that what would be even better than that is consistent investment from the state into the child care sector so that childcare providers, teachers, and families would not have to struggle. But what is happening now that I'm so excited to share is that I believe additional funds were recently announced. And I'll share a little recent article from a few weeks ago. It says that New York State senators want $500 million for childcare workforce in state budget. Essentially, what's being proposed, or what is happening. Actually, I'll just jump right into this. I found out. Jesus, sorry. I'm sorry. My dog is looking at me like I'm crazy. If I make a sudden move, I'm still sitting. If I make any sort of sudden movements, he's up. He's ready. But I found this presentation. I will link it in the description of the YouTube video. The Child Care Availability Task Force. Apparently, it is a PowerPoint presentation. I don't know. What is this called? Is it a report? I guess it's some sort of report that's explaining the fiscal year 24 executive budget with our now governor, Governor Hochul. I think State of the State 2023 State of the State and FY24 Executive Budget. That's what I'm reading. Okay. I am not someone into politics. I'll say that. If you are anything like me and very much not into politics, or you feel like there's no need for you to sign up for newsletters or join in on these like rallies for childcare because you don't know what you would say or how you would contribute, like, I get it. But you don't need to. You don't need to personally get it in order to be an advocate for the industry that you are in business of, or to push the industry in the direction it needs to go. You can be there to support the ones that do know what they're doing. That's for one. When it comes to advocacy and participating in like different sorts of events that would help bring awareness to certain things. But even outside of that, when it comes to just like looking through documents like this executive budget, I don't know what half this stuff is talking about. I really don't. I don't care to spend my time right now and do it. That might sound bad. That might sound wrong to say. It does. But it's the truth. This presentation is 47 pages. When I tell you I hit the Command F and just typed in the specific keywords that I was looking for to find the pages relevant to what I need to know, that was it for me. So within this whole State of the State budget, there is information about, I see just highlighting some words, something about SNAP, the SNAP program, the Home Energy Assistance Program, WIC program. That may have an effect on childcare, but what I'm looking for is specifically what's listed here on page 12. And like I said, I'll link it somewhere. Or if I don't, you're going to comment so that I can respond to your comment with the link. The information about child care workforce incentives. It says that, I'm assuming FY stands for fiscal year. So it says the fiscal year 2024 executive budget dedicates $389 million in underutilized federal funds for a workforce retention grant program to provide payments to childcare providers at 17,000 programs statewide. Quick math. I didn't even do this before or think about it before, but I like to do little quick math when I see numbers like that, just to get an estimate of like, what are we really talking about? And I'm sure it's not going to be as simple as this, or it's not going to be split equally, but just hypothetically, if they're talking about 17,000 programs using $389 million, right? If it was split evenly with no sorts of terms and conditions or like hoops to jump through or capacities to consider, if it's just split evenly, these are the funds you're going to get, that's about nearly $23,000 per program. Will all programs get it? Will all programs be eligible? I don't know. Will all programs get the same amount? I don't know. That's not addressed here. But what is addressed is that it's going to be about $389 million in funds that were for something else that are currently unused, and it's 17,000 programs statewide. Okay, it says that the grants can be used for payroll tax assistance, staff recruitment strategies, sign-on bonuses for new employees, and other expenses related to hiring staff. I'm sure that just like with the other Stabilization 1.0, 2.0, Child Care Deserts Grant, RFA 1, RFA 2, there's going to be dozens and dozens of pages and policies that come along with this eventually. And this is just a broad overview of what to expect. So those are the 4 things that it's currently saying the funds that providers will get need to be using it for: payroll tax assistance, staff recruitment, sign-on bonuses, and other expenses related to hiring staff. It is a workforce incentive. Another thing that set a light bulb off for me, to be honest, is it's saying that another, I guess, I don't know what you call these initiatives. It says that they're going to be engaging the business community in new ways. Employer-supported child care pilot program. The fiscal year 2024 executive budget includes $4.8 million to establish the New York State Employer-Supported Child Care Pilot Program. Participating employers, the state, and employees will split the cost of care. Eligible families must be between 85% and 100% of the state median income. The pilot will operate in 3 separate regions of the state: urban, rural, and suburban. I think those are what else is there? I don't know. But this is what I was talking about in terms of like something kind of similar maybe to the Essential Worker Scholarship. It is specifically saying the term participating employers in here. So I guess this is something that, like, if a company is going to add on the child care pilot program as a benefit to their employees, like if you were gonna go, if Walmart had, I would assume that larger companies would do something like this, because it's essentially saying that the cost is going to be split not just from the state and the parent, but the employer, the company, would also have to be paying for a portion of this childcare. So I assume that they might be splitting it all equally, and maybe the employer pays a third, the state will pay a third, and the employee, the person in need of childcare, will pay a third. So reducing childcare costs by 66% is, for the parent, is pretty good. Is pretty good. So that this set a light bulb off for me, because just full transparency, I'm already thinking about, like, okay, how can we get, as a childcare company, how can we get ahead of this? How can we find the businesses, the large companies that don't already have a childcare benefit or a childcare program that they're contracted with, or some sort, like, how can we create an incentive to get that company to partner with us or choose us as their selected childcare program site? Will that even be a part of the requirement? Like, I can't wait to see this pilot program be built out, and hopefully it's something that we can participate in. There is also something that says Business Navigator Program. The fiscal year 2024 executive budget provides $1 million to create a statewide Business Navigator program with the intent to assist businesses that are interested in supporting the childcare needs of their employees. The Business Navigator program will operate in each of the 10 Regional Economic Development Council regions, REDCs, with $100,000 allocated to each region. The program will also develop a statewide employer child care guidebook for interested employers. Now, I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know how that's different than what I just read about the employer-supported childcare pilot program. Business Navigator, with the intent to assist businesses that are interested in supporting the childcare needs of their employees. Like, what does that mean? How is that different than literally paying for 33% of it? I don't know. But those are two different things. Next, it says employer childcare tax credit. The fiscal year 2024 executive budget includes a new business income tax credit for businesses that create or expand childcare access for employees. The refundable credit established under this program would be available to businesses that create new childcare seats or expand existing childcare programs to add new childcare seats. $25 million in credits would be available for 2 years. So I guess if I'm assuming by that last thing that if a business takes advantage of either the Business Navigator program or the employer-supported childcare pilot program, I think that means that they're going to be able to take advantage of the childcare tax credit. I don't know. So that is incentivizing employers to, because a question on my mind was, why would, I mean, I guess I can understand why a business would offer to pay for a portion of childcare as a benefit, because it's a benefit. Same reason why a business would offer health insurance or dental, or like you want to be able to provide benefits to attract your employees. But aside from that, especially if it's new, like, what's the incentive? Like, what's in it for them as companies? I guess what's in it for them is that they could get a credit on their taxes. We'll see how that works. And then the rest of this goes into numbers, grant summaries of what has already been spent. There's information about childcare assistance spending. There's links to testimonials from daycare providers about their experiences with these pandemic grant fundings. I wonder if there's something in here about how many programs closed. Yeah, I thought I could find info about like how many programs closed. I'm sure there's some sort of report or information out there about that. This also talks about childcare affordability, equitable access to childcare. Maybe I will read it. Maybe I will read the whole thing. I didn't realize that the whole entire document was pretty much about childcare. I saw the opportunities and related to what's coming up, and that's kind of where I stopped because I had been anticipating it, and once I saw it I was like, oh wow, okay, great, it's actually happening. And I know that it's actually happening because, going back to what I said before about being tapped into like local, what's going on locally, every Tuesday I'm in a meeting with dozens of other childcare directors or owners within Long Island, along with a representative from CUNY, which is City University of New York. I believe that the person that leads it is a representative of CUNY, and with a representative from our licensing agency. On these calls, information is shared between everybody. Like we do, typically it's just talking about struggles that we're experiencing or getting answers to questions about licensing, or just like what's going on locally that we can, like events we can go to, trainings we can participate in. But sometimes I learn about what's coming up like not necessarily from any person in particular, but like something will be said that alerts me to like do some research into figuring out like what could be on the horizon. I'll leave it at that. And with that, it brings me to have terminology to search for things that lead me to presentations like these, like finding information that I otherwise would not have even known to look out for. Also on that call, we typically get updates about like things to look out for in our email from the licensing agency or from our CCR&R or from our QRIS, so that when those things do come up, we don't overlook them or automatically delete them or put them, archive them, whatever, so that we can say like, oh yeah, so-and-so told me about this, let me open it. So when I heard in that call that the workforce grant could be coming soon, it was something that we needed to look out for to update our current staff list. There's no current reason why this is happening, but that same day, I believe, I saw that we had an email from our licensor saying that there's a workforce grant coming. We need your accurate current staff list and to remove anybody that is no longer employed. I don't know what that means. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know. But now I know to start looking out for it in the news. So with that said, don't stop at limiting yourself to getting on newsletters and paying attention to events and things from your licensing agency or your CCR&R or your QRIS, but your local public universities like CUNY or SUNY, if you're in New York, often have conferences, workshops. This in a couple days, I'm headed to a job fair that I found out about because I'm on CUNY's email list. They emailed out as if I was an employee looking for a job, but I responded back, is it too late to register as a employer seeking applicants? And they said, no, it's not too late. And they sent me the link to sign up. I would have never known about it if I wasn't on their email list. You just have to, you seen that TikTok? You've got to get on your Zoom.
You got to get on your Zoom. Every morning you got to get on your Zoom at 10.
I can't do this episode. I can't do the podcast by myself. Yeah, you got to get on your Zoom. Stay connected, okay? But I think that's it. There was an article that I saved from months and months ago. Let me see if I have it. I think it was before that I found that article, well before this task force presentation came out. So it's probably not relevant anymore because it is old and was just hearsay. Where is it? Oh yes, it was from January. It was actually an article posted on January 10th of this year to New York State's website. And it was essentially saying that, just summarizing, like last year, Governor Hochul announced a historic $7 billion state investment in childcare. Still, childcare uptake remains low, and the governor remains committed to helping families access the resources that are available. Okay, so this is basically explaining what was likely going to be in the State of the State address or whatever this was. What is this? What did I say this was? State of the State Executive Budget. I think this is just explaining like what to possibly expect, because a lot of the same information is in here, but this was just from several months ago. And it is so important, I feel, in my opinion, to have this information before it's available. So I found this article in January. It is now May. And I've saved it because obviously it was relative to the industry that I'm in, but I mostly saved it because I knew that like it would give me, well, one, I wanted to tell you, obviously, but I knew that I would be able to brainstorm ideas of how to be ahead of the curve when it comes down to when we are ready to apply for these things, or if certain, like we're talking about employer sponsored childcare or employer tax credits, or like we want to be basically first or second in line for this kind of stuff, for one, because clearly funds can run out. Two, if there's limited opportunity to be partnered with businesses or companies or employers, as mentioned on this executive budget, if there's limited availability for that, which there is, because there's only a certain amount of money allocated to it. I think it was only, $1 million, 4.8 million, 4.8 million for the employer-supported childcare pilot program, and only 1 million to the business Navigator program. So it's limited to how much money the state is going to allocate to the employers for participating in this. And those employers might not be childcare experts. For the most part, they're not. They might not have their own company-owned childcare on site in their what's it called? In their place of business. They might need, or they might prefer to contract with a childcare program that already exists, or a childcare provider that knows what they're doing and can open a program for them. I have already talked about this multiple times. This is not relevant to this, but similarly with the university opportunity that we are currently working through, we were selected to be childcare operators and are working on contracting with a local university so that we can bring our childcare program into the university. I'm thinking that based on the language within this presentation, that is kind of what they're expecting other companies to do in order to take advantage of this opportunity and to help with the childcare crisis going on. So if that is available, we want to help. We want to be a part of it. We want to be able to expand our services using the state's dollars. Yes, we know that we bring a quality program, and we know that we could duplicate. We have proven to duplicate it over and over again, and we want to continue doing so. And if we can do it with money allocated from New York State rather than us having to take out loans or use our own funds, that will allow us to help reinvest into making our business better versus having to choose between other things. So keep that in mind. Just sharing. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. That's really it. I think that needs to be it. This episode was way longer than I expected. I want to ask very kindly one more time that if you are listening audio only, please, it does myself and my co-host Gigi, who's invisible today, it does us so much goodness, if that makes sense, if you just scroll down to the bottom of your podcast page and give us a rating, specifically a 5-star one, and a review. Definitely leave your feedback, your comments in the review section, since there's nowhere else to do it if it's audio only that you're listening on. And if you would like to join in on what will likely become a discussion, I can imagine, go over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JennyChristine, watch the replay version of this, or just click in to jump in on the comment section and leave your comment or your feedback there. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the like button. That also helps me out a lot. If you're not subscribed, join the 20,000 of us that are here. I would really appreciate it. There's a red button that says subscribe. I make a lot of videos like this. I make a lot of episodes with my co-hosts like this, except it's better because it's a conversation. So click the subscribe button so that you'll be notified every time I post a new video. And if you really, really want to be notified directly to your device, hit the little bell icon too. But that is all. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can do so by going to @DannyChristineConsulting, and go ahead and give Gigi a follow too @gg.solutions. I will see you all in the next episode or video. Bye-bye. Come, say hi to the people. Come, say hi to the peoples. Oh, my baby. Look, say hi. This is George. He loves me very much, and I love him. Say bye. Oh, no. Your breath stinks. Goodbye.